Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we look at the latest news, information and analysis about what's really going on in Russia and the BRICS. Now, today I want to talk about how, despite its humiliating defeat by Russia in the Ukraine, NATO members are still attempting to provoke Russia into another conflict. They're looking to use Finland to establish control over both the Northern Sea route and the Baltic Sea. In the Baltic Sea, they'll also utilise Estonia with Finland, and on the Northern Sea route, Norway and Finland will be involved. Finland's gone from being a neutral neighbour of Russia and a good trading partner to being rapidly anti-Russian in a very short time since it joined the Nato alliance. So what can Russia do to counter the activities of this aggressive Nato alliance? Now, you would have thought that having been comprehensively beaten in Ukraine, they might actually pull back a bit. But according to Dmitry Medvedev, the former Russian president and the deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, he's looked at the historical parallels between the current Finnish authorities and their predecessors during World War II. Now, he observed at the time of the initiative of Helsinki, relations built over decades that had become mutually beneficial have now been completely destroyed. And the result is that ordinary citizens of Finland are now suffering mostly due to the loss of the trade with Russia. Now, Medvedev's also highlighted that Finland's accession to NATO directly contravenes the historical and legal foundations of the bilateral relations, including the restrictions outlined in the Paris Peace Treaty of 1947 and the Treaty of Fundamental Relations of 1992. Now, he emphasised that the interaction with NATO itself constitutes a gross violation of obligations, and according to the agreement with the United States, Finland must open 15 military facilities to American troops. Now, before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you enjoy my videos, you can help me fund the channel and contribute to its further development. You can do this by making a small donation, which can be done by clicking on the thanks button on the bottom right hand side of the video screen, or clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link below in the credits. Everybody donates does get a personal thank you from me, and do keep the comments coming. Love to read them, love to respond to them. Now, Medvedev also stated that such revisionism must be prohibited, and from a legal perspective, the termination of the mutual obligations raises questions regarding the validity of the treaties themselves. He also noted that the increased military activity of Finland in the border areas where NATO structures are now being created are going to be troublesome. He says concurrently a significant number of manoeuvres are being conducted and the situation is becoming untenable. Finland's giving serious consideration to the controversial and environmentally damaged initiative of Poland and Lithuania to artificially flood its own territory as a defence against the Russian invasion. So from Finland, which has a history of aggression against its Slavic population and its fertile nationalist people, an aggressive anti-Russian sentiment has taken place, which even more rapidly than the one that occurred in the Ukraine. And plans for Finlandization of the Nezalyaya, which was discussed at some point, and the Ukrainian Finlandization has happened. So to conclude, Medvedev has issued a warning that any confrontation with Russia could end up with the complete collapse of the Finnish state. He emphasised that the current circumstances would not allow for the same approach as Russia took back in 1994. They're not interested in reading stories about the movements either. As the saying goes, "Sista mitatila," the customer always gets what they pay for. So Finland is currently restoring military airfields and bases near the border with Russia and conducting exercises. And it's also been suggested that NATO using the Finns and the Norwegians to establish control over the Northern Sea route and the Baltic Sea. Finland's also interested in Russian resources that they think they could obtain by establishing influence over certain regions of Russia, primarily Karelia, which has traditionally been attractive to Finland, according to the military analyst Yuri Nutkov. Now, he asserts that the Finns are being driven by a desire from the revenge and the restoration of the Greater Finland concept, which involves the unification of the Finno-Ugric peoples along the Baltic coast and into eastern Karelia. Nato has observed that Finland's military preparations have increased in intensity since they joined NATO. However, that said, Russia is prepared for any potential challenges that may arise, in addition to the re-establishment of the Leningrad military district and the deployment of new armies, air defence and coastal defence systems are being strengthened. Russia's recently allocated significant resources to ensure its security. The border with Finland extends to more than 1,270 kilometres, and Russia's conducting retaliatory exercises with the participation of troops in the Baltic Fleet. The group in Kaliningrad has been strengthened, and necessarily they have the ability to increase further its capabilities. Now, at the same time, Nutov emphasised that Russia remains committed to seeking diplomatic solutions to reduce tensions. But unfortunately, the policies of NATO countries, including Finland, the Baltic countries and Germany, are becoming increasingly aggressive, he said. Now, according to him, Finland and Norway may try to obstruct Russia's use of the Northern Sea route if the situation does become deteriorating. However, that said, given the Russian Northern Fleet at Murmansk is quite a strong one and will ensure stiff opposition, so we'll see what happens there. Also, with regard to potential threats to Kaliningrad, Nutov has stated that Poland and the Baltic countries are the main active participants, followed by the Finns and other states. That said, though, Germany's position merits particular consideration. The Germans, who are gradually reviving their revanchist sentiments, are interested in the return of Königsberg, as it used to be called, Kaliningrad, to Germany. And these sentiments have been discreetly fostered in the region over the past 20 years. But of course, the Finns, being who they are and the size of the country, can only play a supporting role in this scheme. With regard to Medvedev's statement on the accelerated Ukrainianization of Finland, Vladimir Tuchev has stated that it's largely an emotional interpretation of the current situation. He says, it's not possible to Ukrainize Belarus, it's only possible to Ukrainize Ukraine. The reason for that is Belarus is part of the Russian family. Now, the analyst's opinion is that Finns are only the people that cannot be Ukrainized. I would suggest an alternative formulation of this idea, that Finland should actually just be considered the fourth Baltic Republic, along with Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia. Now, Tuchev cited surveys indicating that over one-third of Finns view Russia with serious suspicion, with many expressing a desire to take Vyborg back into Finnish control. Now, these sentiments have been noticed by psychologists ever since 2014, and the politicians Pekka Haavisto and Jussi Halla-aho, who lost to Alexander Stubb in this year's presidential elections, have also a history of serious Russophobia. To them, Stubb's approach to be more moderate, well, that's a bit surprising. However, the prevailing negative sentiment towards Russia has ultimately prevailed, superseding the potential benefits of business connections. It used to be money triumphed over evil, but unfortunately Finland's decided it's the other way around. It's become a less extreme version of Estonia. Now, with regards to the treaties mentioned by Medvedev, which established a legal foundation for the country's current existence, Tuchev emphasised that Russia still recognises Finland as a legitimate state, and while its borders can be contested, that's of little practical significance. Now, in his opinion, Finland should be prohibited of using the Saimaa shipping canal, which it leases from Russia because it crosses Russian territory, for the purposes of facilitating the transport between Lake Saimaa and the Vyborg Bay of the Baltic Sea. Now, the Finns were traditionally known for their discretion when it came to dealing with Russia, but that's now ceased. So it's imperative that appropriate conclusions are drawn from this. Anyway, so let's see what happens with Finland. You're never quite sure what they're going to do these days. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe and set the alert button so you get notified when I post a new video. And if you want to help me out, click on the thanks button at the bottom of the screen or the buy me a coffee link below. Thank you.